up there. All right. Huh? Oh, give me a break. Talk about last minute. Stress.
Okay.
Well,
So I think,
we must be having a presentation by the police tonight.
mm-hmm.
Do you suppose? Unless they just want to show off their shiny badges, yeah.
So I think we've got everybody here. Are we ready?
Kelly's on her way.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Let's see here. Let me just make sure. All right. Good evening. Welcome to the special city council meeting for September 28th, 2016. We've got a budget presentation, or quite a number of them. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, well, good evening. We've got quite a number of budget presentations, but before I begin, I'd like to excuse Councilmember Kopang. He was drawn away on business, and these two dates that we have are hearing both the 28th today and the 29th tomorrow. He'll be unavailable. Also, Councilmember Maloney is en route. She got stuck in some I-5 traffic, and she'll be here shortly. And I'll announce her presence when she does arrive. And we'll make sure that's all reflected in the minutes. So we're going to start off with general overview. I do want to say for everybody that our city clerk has done a tremendous job putting these handy-dandy budget presentation books together for us. I also have a copy of my binder of the proposed budget, and if somebody didn't bring theirs, you can certainly use mine during that presentation or any particular presentation. So tonight, we're going to first hear from Ariwoola, our finance director, in regard to the general overview. Then we will have department presentations for the police department, economic development, human resources, city clerk's office, and mayor's office. Then tomorrow, we'll have public works, community development department, parks department, city attorney's office, and municipal court. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Aday, please start us off.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council. What we have before you this afternoon is the proposed 2017 and 2018 biennial budget. Before we get started, I just want to share with you that the Mayor's goal about this budget is to make sure that we maintain the same level, if not better, of service that we are providing in 2016. Also to make sure that, as you can see in the audience, that we fund our police department properly. How can we not do that? So here we are. And to also make sure that we stay within the guidelines of the council. So in maintaining the service, we want to make sure that there are no layoffs. Also, that we hold on to our good employees by paying them, market fair wages. So those are the three major goals that we try to accomplish with this budget. With that said, in this budget also, we cover several items, and I will try to make sure I address the major items covered in this budget. I'll try to point out the major additions to the budget. I'll also try to share with you some of the challenges that we have in this budget, and also propose some ideas in how we can rectify some of the challenges. The major items addressed in this, one of the items is our health insurance will be going up. For 2017, we're expecting it to go up by 4.5%. Even though it is going up compared to what we used to experience in 2012 or even earlier than that, having a 15-20% increase in health insurance during those days were not unusual. But this is one of the challenges that we are facing this year, and we make sure that this budget accommodates that. Also, we funded our risk management fund. That's an addition of about $500,000. What do we do with our risk management fund? That is where the city is self-insured regarding our liabilities for our vehicles or for our properties. We want to make sure that we have enough to be able to recoup, to cover our losses before we have the stop loss with the insurance. Also, this budget takes into consideration a reasonable amount of COLA to make sure that, we conform with the current labor agreement that we have in place. Also, SCORE and King County Jail, and that will be on your page C84. The budget for SCORE and King County Jail is now about $5.78 million. So that is an addition of more than $250,000 over what we're paying in 2016. The same thing will be for 2018. So, yes, we're working with, the city is working really hard, both the police department and the courts and and SCORE, trying to make sure we're able to keep our our regular number of inmates in jail down, and that will have an impact on the amount that we pay. But the caveat to this is, even if we reduce our daily population, if some of our members also reduce theirs too, we may not see a significant change in our cost. Also, file communication is another item that we take care on in this. That is going up by about $200,000 in 2017, and you can find more information on that on page C84 of your budget. So the same thing in 2018. So we're looking at about $420,000 increase in 2018. So for file communication. Also, based on the, as I mentioned earlier, that one of the goals is to make sure that we maintain the service level as we have it in 2016. One thing that we did in 2016 is to make sure that we make provision that some of our police officers will be coming on board in the middle of the year and all of that. With 2017, the 131 officers are fully funded from January 1st through December 31st. So, and the total police department budget also has gone up from about 26.7 to 31.1 million in 2017. In the city council budget, we are funding our AWC, SCA, Puget Sound Regional Council dues, to the tune an increase of about $26,000. Puget Sound Clean Air Act, that is about $38,000. As I pointed out earlier, this the 2017 reflects funding 131 officers fully start from day one of 2017. Also, we're funding, in addition to that 131 officers, we're also funding about 2.26 million in overtime, which they will use as they see fit or as needed. We are proposing this budget also from lodging tax, a $10,000 annually for Historical Society, as long as they will perform a service that meet the requirement of lodging tax in 2017 and 18. The loan that we took out for the purchase of target property will become due next year. We make provision for it in this budget that if we sell the building, if we sell the land, we'll be able to pay our debt back, or if we choose to refinance it or whatever. But because it is due next year, the provision is made in this budget to be able to address that. Again, as part of the 3 goals that I mentioned earlier, we also make sure that this budget conform with, your policy requiring us to maintain certain level of fund balance. So all the individual funds that are spelled out in your policy about the minimum fund balance, all of them are met. So if you go into the budget book, that is spelled out on page B16. Also, actually, one thing that we've done this year, the RCW actually required that we can get the budget to you the first Monday in November. Here we are in September. So I think due to the demand of the mayor, we're able to get that budget to you in September instead of waiting till November. Also, Dumont Bay Center, I think that is one of the discussion that both the mayor and the council made clear earlier that some things we need to fix. So this budget make provision to fund beach trail, which is the encroachment from the beach to the land of Dumont Bay Center. So we're spending about $50,000 to be able to correct that. Also, roof replacement, about $100,000 is set aside for that. Kitchen equipment of about $20,000. Our transportation project, we're also planning on spending about $20 million in 2017 and about $12 million in 2018. And that is also available on your page C96 of the budget book. The annual overlay, that is also on your page D5, which we're planning to do. We usually fund that for about $1.5 million. That is available in there for 2017 and 2018. Also, this budget, we've made provision for the Performing Arts and Event Center that will open next year. So as part of this budget, we're making provision. That is an added, budget of $0.9 million that will generate most of the revenue to fund that expense. So I think that is also identified on page C12. most of that fund is coming from the revenue that they plan to generate. And in 2018, about $1 million. Yes, they will not break even the first year that they are open or the second year either. So there will be some degree of support from the city. But major part of their revenue is coming from the rental and from the ticket for the shows that they will be doing there. The priority of this budget is, again, the safety of this community and the safety of our people, as I've mentioned earlier, and as you can see, some of the major spending on the, safety of people and safety of our roads and this is again, as I mentioned, we follow your guidelines. This is the balance of each one of those funds, comparing that to the requirement of the fund balance policy that we have. General fund, as of the end of 2018, we'll have 9 million in there. That is your requirement. The same thing, the street fund will have 500,000, that is your requirement, based on the reserve policy. And the same thing with our utility tax. Hotel, motel, just as a caution, yes, the reserve policy for hotel, motel lodging tax is 200,000. But for the past few years, they've been saving up for project of the future, like Special Olympic and a couple of other items. So actually, they will need more than that $500,000 in the future. But that is why the amount that they have in the reserve over there is more than 200,000, because they're saving up for the future projects that they're planning to bring along. The same thing with our community center is fine. Traffic safety, REIT, the Prop 1, and Performing Arts Center, and CDBG, Dumas Bay, I think part of the funding for the roof replacement for the kitchen is out of the fund balance, and that is why this is about 25,000 less than what the minimum required is. If we choose not to do that, then that will bring the fund balance. But again, based on your policy, if we go below this, we have 3 years to make it up, and we need to invest a little bit in that property as well. The same thing for some of the other funds, the overlay, the park reserve. I think you added the park reserve actually to the fund balance last year to make sure that we have adequate fund to be able to replace any of the fields should any of them fail. So in less than 3 years, we've been able to meet that requirement. So that is good. What are the major challenges that we're facing? Yes, we do present a monthly report to you every month, and we show the sales tax is going up and the utility tax is going up. Yes, sales tax is growing, utility tax is growing, but they are growing much slower than our costs are growing. Fast-growing, market-driven salaries, wages, and benefit. City of Federal Way operates in a larger job market. The job market that we operate actually extends from Everett probably through Olympia, because on I-5 corridor, you can easily live in Olympia and walk in Federal Way, or you can live in Everett and walk in Federal Way. So when we're competing for labor, we're competing with all those cities or entities within that area. And for the past, after the recession, government is hiring. Governments are hiring, and that is pumping up the cost a great deal. In order for us to hire good people and to retain good people, we have to attempt to pay what the market demand. Aging city properties and equipment. We balance this budget with the hope that for the equipment, like some of our vehicles, that we're suspending contributing to the reserve for 2 years. Just to make sure that there's no misunderstanding, even though we're skipping those 2 years, there's adequate reserve should we need to replace any of those vehicles. But at the same token, I need to let you understand, in order to balance this budget, we have to skip 2 years. What does that do? That means when you have a 4-year car, 4-year equipment, you are saying, instead of replacing it in 4 years, you are scheduling it for 6 years. As I said, if you look through all the reserve, and I can go back on my PowerPoint, the fleet and equipment fund balance is adequate enough. Should we need, the sky falls and we wipe out 10 cars, we can still afford to buy those cars. We have adequate fund in the fund. The individual cars may not have enough reserve of its own, but the fund itself is adequate to be able to cover any of those. The challenge is in 2019, when we start to pay these reserves back, we need to make sure that our revenue has grown well enough to be able to start paying that reserve back. And as you know, government will doesn't turn so fast, so we need to prepare and get our revenue in order to be able to do those things by 2019. Increasing benefit costs. Post-retirement, which is public employee retirement alone, a few years ago was only about 5-point-something%. Today is 11-point-something%. So the benefits are going up, which we do not really have any control over. As I pointed out earlier, so is the medical insurance. Some of these items are going up that we just have to keep up with them. Increasing service needs, we're growing. And the economy is getting better, so there will be more demands on the service. And we have to keep up with it. So we're hoping the construction will pick up. We're hoping we will develop a great downtown. That will require more service, and that will also require more cost. As I mentioned earlier, we have equipment replacement reserve of about 1.8 that we're skipping in 2017 and 2018. That, you can also see that on page D35. As I mentioned earlier, the slow-growing revenue, I think our property tax can only go, we can only increase it by 1%, except when you have new construction. And I think with the mayor and council's goal of downtown redevelopment, that is what you're trying to do, to increase construction within the space that you have. That is the only way to grow the property tax without having to increase the rate. The sales tax, other than recruiting more retail stores into town, which again, we're doing, and that is the only way to increase it. It is growing, but again, not fast enough. Utility tax, with new businesses coming on board, with new building coming on board, that will also increase the use of these utilities. And increasing the use of utility will also increase the utility tax on them. Just to put things in perspective, for an average citizen, when they pay $1 in property tax for 2016, for each dollar that they pay, only 8 cents come to the city. So out of $1 of property tax that an average Joe pays on their property, only 8 cents of that comes to the city. The major part of it, which is rightly so, goes to the school district. That is 46 cents on a dollar. About 15 cents goes to the state, 15 cents to the fire and EMS, and 10 cents to the county. And the other 5 cents go to the port and library and flood zone. For 2016, this is also the breakdown of the property tax for the city of Federal Way. 55% of the city's property was voted on by the citizen. 44% or 45% of it was non-voted. The city, again, per thousand is $1.19 per thousand. And public school is about $6.75 per thousand. Looking at how much the city charges, the city's property tax rate is, if we compare ourselves to our neighboring cities, this is what it looks like for the past 10 years. In 2016, per dollar, a city of Federal Way property owner is paying the city $1.19 per thousand. In Kent, it is $1.51. In Auburn, $2.05. Renton, $2.71. And Seattle, $2.77. And SeaTac, $3. That is just the 2016. Now, if we look back 10 years, the city of Federal Way has levied the least of this group. Every year, 2015, we levy $1.25. Kent, $1.58. Auburn, $2.08. Renton, $2.83. Seattle, $2.62. And SeaTac, $3.16. Again, the lowest in 2009, where we levy 97 cents. In 2009, city of Renton levied the highest, $2.37, which is way, almost 3 times what we levied. So for the past, actually, even though I showed 10 years on this report, but I actually went back 13 years. For the past 13 years, the city of Federal Way levied the lowest rate per thousand among these entities. This is how we stack up. The assessed amount for each one of these cities, the King County assessor grabbed the total value of the properties within each one of these cities. So for City of Federal Way for 2016, our property was assessed at $8.9 billion. So out of that $8.9 billion, our tax is $10,487,000. Burien, the valuation for their property was $5.16 billion, and they were able to levy $7.4 million. If we compare ourselves to, say, Auburn, where the assessed value within their city limit is actually lower than Federal Way. So the value for them is $7.95 billion, and the tax levy is 16 million. Almost 60% higher than ours, but just $1 billion less than ours. CTAC, renting. So that is some of the information that are out there. The same thing for sales tax. The citizens will come to you and say, well, my sales tax, $950, is high. How much of that 9.5% is actually coming to the city? For each dollar of sales tax, less than 9 cents is coming to the city. In each $1 of sales tax that our people that purchase items in the city of Federal Way, for each $1 that they pay, less than 9 cents is coming to the city. Criminal justice takes about 1 cent. King County mental health, about 1 cent. King County, 1.5 cents. King County Metro, about 10 cents. Sound Transit, about 10. And the state, 68 cents for each dollar of sales tax. So when you pull out that dollar for the city of Federal Way, we're only getting less than 9 cents on the dollar. With as much service that we need to provide, to some degree, this is the breakdown of our major source of revenue. And that is a great thing, and that is also a challenge, because we need to keep up the service that we provide. For the utility taxes that we have, again, comparing ourselves to all of those neighboring cities, Auburn, they charge 6%. On solid waste, they charge 7%. On cable, 5%. BIENNIAL, 6%. Yes, Federal Way, we pay 7.75%, but our water and sewer, much, much less, 3.6%. You have Kent on water, 13%, on sewer, 13%, cable, 5%, cable TV, 6%, and stormwater, 13%, solid waste, 7.8%, gas, 6%, electric rate, 6%. And CTAC, that is currently not charging anything, they are looking into what they need to do to raise additional revenue. Our economy is getting better, and entities are hiring. That is part of why the market is demanding higher salary for employees. So the market is demanding. So it's not because we want to pay, it's because the market demands what we pay. For so long, part of also what put us a little bit at disadvantage, for so long, the city didn't pay much COLA. So therefore, they push us behind. And based on what our HR has been going through constantly, and I'm sure through their presentation, you'll be able to hear that, constantly, you know, we're recruiting to fill new positions. So much turnover, because other people are willing to hire good employees at a premium. As I mentioned, our health insurance is going up, and PERS is going up. To put things in a little bit a different perspective also, looking at 2006, 2007, and 2015, see the growth of our utility tax and Prop 1 the property tax, the sales tax, the total police call Valicom cost, and the rest of the general fund excluding. See how it has grown or declined through those years. This is the total general fund, less the police in 2006. This is what it was in 2007. This is where we are in 2015. So, yes, you know, as I said earlier, our revenue is growing, but growing slowly. But the market is driving most of our cost much higher, that the revenue is not keeping up with our cost. Aging properties, like I said, we're skipping 2 years for the equipment replacement. Some of our properties are also getting older. So as time goes by, we will need funds to be able to take care of some of those. We must pay park facilities. What are the potential revenue ideas? Later on during this budget process, I'll be coming forward to you with a new revenue schedule. You know, our directors have worked really hard to review the current fees that we charge and what it should be. Just to share with you briefly, some of these fees are pretty much just recouping our cost. And these fees, some of them were set 5 years ago, before the escalation in salary, before the escalation in benefits. So if we're charging fees today based on salaries of 5 years ago, are we really recouping our cost? No. We'll be bringing that before you, and as our directors will present to you later on, some of the things that they are requesting depends on whether we're able to raise additional revenue. Also, we probably need to equalize our fees. If I'm paying 5%, the next guy needs to pay 5% too. If Burger King is paying 5%, maybe McDonald's needs to pay 5% too. So I think those are some of the options available to you. As a quick backdrop for the 2017 budget that we put together for you, the franchise fee for Lake Haven, we're estimating that to be about $850,000. Out of that franchise fees, we will pay fire hydrant and repair by $622. And street light, the PUD has increased the cost of the electricity, their rate. So we'll pay about $334. In total, we'll be out by $956. So this is part of where there may need to be some equalizing of fees or recouping our total costs. Some of the information just for the public, they're also available on our website. The budget book is right here on our website, and people can access that quickly. It's right there. So the proposed budget is available online. People can look at it from the comfort of their home. The same thing, our 2015, and even before then, our audited financial statement is also located online so that people can see these and review these. This is the website address, and people can go there and access that. Yes, all the CAFA. 2015, 2014, 13, 12, and 11. And if somebody were to go to the old website, they will also be able to find all the way to 2015. I think probably 2004. So all of this information are available online. The popular annual financial report, that also, we have some extra copies here, but they're also available. The first time we did this was 2013, but it is online for the citizens. So some of the information that I reference easily right here. And it's only about 23 pages, and easily, there's even some other information, like right here is per capita in the King County, we rank 29. So this information is right there for our citizens. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any question, and I'll wait for my colleagues to present individual department budget, and we can, probably October 4th, get more into the details.
Thank you, Ade. Before we ask any questions, I do want to note that Councilmember Maloney joined us quite some time ago, so she's back with us. But I didn't want to interrupt your presentation. Council, do you have any questions? This is a broad overview before we get into the police. All right, Ade, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now it's time for the police department presentation. And I would note that the, in the proposed budget that was provided at the last meeting, the line-by-line budget for the police department starts at C81. All right, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor Farrell, Deputy Mayor Burbidge, members of the council. It's my pleasure to present to you the Police Department's 2017-18 proposed biennial budget. I'd like to first introduce the command staff members who are responsible for the leadership and management of the Police Department. In the front row nearest to me is Deputy Chief Kyle Sumter, Deputy Chief Steve Neal, Commander Stan McCall. Next to him is Commander Steve Arbuthnot. And in the second row here we have Commander Brett Hatfield. And then we have Executive Assistant to myself and the two Deputy Chiefs, Annette Allen. And then our Civilian Operations Manager, Kathy Schrock. This is our organizational chart showing our divisions within the police department. We have a total of 160 employees, FTEs, and of the 160, we have 131 positions that are sworn positions within the police department. We have 19 work units within the police department, and those work units are supervised by first-line supervisors. And then we have 7 sections within the police department, and those are overseen by commanders within the police department. And down here in the chart, these are divisions within the police department. We have field operations. Deputy Chief Kyle Sumter oversees the field operations division. This is where a majority of our employees are assigned. This is a uniform side of the police department. We have patrol, traffic, special operations unit, contract positions. Pretty much everybody on this side wears a uniform on a daily basis. Second is the support service division. It's overseen by Deputy Chief Steve Neal. We have 30 employees assigned to that area, that division, and we have our criminal investigation section there, detectives, and also the administrative side. And our professional standards side is also assigned to support services. And then we have our civilian operations side of the police department. This is where significant number of our civilian staff are assigned, and it's overseen by Civilian Operations Manager Kathy Schrock, who's also our the face of Federal Way Police Department. She's our PIO as well. In the patrol side, we respond to about 75,000 calls for service. That equates to about 200 calls for service on a daily basis within the police department. In 2015 and 16, key accomplishments within the police department. First, we maintained our CLIA gold standard accreditation rating. As a community, as a city, we should feel very proud that we are a nationally accredited law enforcement agency. Just to tell you how difficult it is to attain a national certification, accreditation, there are only 7 law enforcement agencies in the state of Washington that are nationally accredited. We're one of those agencies. Just to give you a list of the agencies that are nationally accredited in the state of Washington, they're Bellevue Police Department, Tacoma Police Department, Clark County Sheriff's Department, Washington State Patrol, University of Washington Police Department, and Port of Seattle Police Department. So we're one of those 7 agencies. What this means to our community is that we have the best practices, best policies, and not only do we have the policies, that we actually practice what we say we do. Second area that we implemented this year is a positive tickets program. That's where we issue positive tickets to kids for doing something positive. And we have issued over 500 positive tickets this year, and we will continue to partner with other businesses in our community and continue to expand this program. This is one way of expanding or building trust with our community, particularly with our youth. And with the current state of police-community relations in our country, I think this is one of those things that when we do CLIA and do these types of programs, it goes to build trust with our citizens. And then we also implemented the Youth Safety Academy. We did that this summer. We did it with Federal Way High School students. This is similar to Adult Citizens Academy. Even youth can go through our Citizens Academy, but it's a kind of a version of that. We did a 1-week pilot program. It was a complete success, and we look to expand this program to other high schools within our community this coming summer. So we'll be partnering with Federal Way Public Schools and expanding the Youth Safety Academy. We'll be launching our first Coffee with a Cop on October 7th. So this is that particular day is a National Coffee with a Cop Day. It's part of the community-oriented policing initiative. And again, this will be another initiative for us to meet with our citizens. And the cool thing about these meetings is it's usually line-level staff meeting with our citizens, no agenda, and just meeting and chatting and just getting to know each other and answer any questions that they might have. And we'll probably expand. We'll do one this year, and we'll probably do 3 or 4 next year, and we'll partner with other businesses in our community to do that. Other key accomplishments we noted, and now in the budget document, you'll see all the things that we accomplished. So in the PowerPoint presentation, I'm not listing all of our accomplishments for the sake of keeping time at a reasonable time to do the presentation. But shopping cart recovery team, we have 5 volunteers, 4 out in the field and 1 administrative person. And each year, the volunteers pick up around 3,500 to 4,000 shopping carts with a very minimal cost to our community. They make a tremendous positive impact. And they go out once or twice a week, and they pick up the carts and return to the retail business owners at absolutely no cost. Free service to the businesses. And then also we have 11 mobile automated fingerprint identification system that we've deployed in the field. So quite often, sometimes makes our officers a lot more efficient identifying individuals. Sometimes there's a medical reason we may want to identify that person, and we've used it for those purposes as well. But we have deployed that this year in the field. Other key accomplishments, regional collaboration. We can't impact crime or quality of life ourselves, so we do partner with other agencies and non-law enforcement entities to make a positive impact. We do have a detective assigned to a regional task force. It's called the Valley Narcotics Enforcement Team. We also have a detective assigned to the Auto Theft Task Force called the Patrol Task Force. But we do collaborate, and we'll continue to do that. That's very important. And then we made a conscious effort, and we've done this for many years as a community-oriented police organization, but using our crime analysts and prevention specialists to do community outreach. Just one aspect. We participate in the Mayor's Neighborhood Connection. The CAPS unit is block watch, participating in block watch meetings and so forth. They're critical to public outreach. And then traffic enforcement. We take a three-pronged approach: prevention, education, enforcement, and we have really stepped up our traffic enforcement, I would say, in the past 3 years. Council has played a key role funding us for the Nick and Derrick project, and we've been able to put out additional officers to conduct DUI enforcement, distracted driving. I've said this many times, but the greatest threat to our citizens is a traffic-related incident. And distracted driving, in the recent years, our fatality accidents across our country is actually on the climb. And fortunately for us, in our community, we have not had a fatality collision this year. Other key accomplishments, we are in the process right now of implementing our new department-wide electronic scheduling system. So we are going paperless system, and we're looking to implement that this year. And we also provide high level of training. So collectively as an agency, when officers are encountering critical incidents, that they perform at their peak. So some of our training's tough. We do reality-based training. We use multiple disciplines to put officers in real similar situations that they might face, so that when they do encounter a stressful situation, it's much better that they're going to have a positive outcome. We've done that for a number of years. And also CLIA, being nationally accredited, assures that we are training our people at a much higher level, higher standard than what's required by state law. New program requests. We are again asking for funding for the Nick and Derrick distracting driving initiative, and that would be funded from the traffic fund, but we'd like to continue that effort. The second area is a registered sex offender verification program. We send our detectives out into the field. Level 1 sex offenders, we meet with them face-to-face on an annual basis. Level 2 on a biannual, and level 3 offenders, we meet with them on a quarterly basis. If there's any violations, we've heard charges regarding that. I think that's made a positive difference in keeping our community safe. And also seeking grant funding from the Traffic Safety Commission. Again, the $28,000 would help with traffic enforcement, seatbelt enforcement, speed enforcement, and so forth. As far as vehicle fleet this year, we'll be asking for, we're getting 2 vehicles, 2 marked vehicles, 2 vehicles in 2017, and 2 vehicles in 2018 under the vehicle replacement plan, or vehicle replacement funds. And the item that we did ask for funding and did not get approved would be the requesting for 2 overhire officer positions. We're allocated 131, but the reality of maintaining it at 131 is somewhat difficult, because generally our agency history will have attrition of 3 or 4 officers through retirement, and for other means will leave the agency, because we have 131 officers. And when we have a vacancy, and when we hire someone, let's say an entry-level person, let's say we hired someone even on that date, they're waiting to go to the academy, 5.5-month academy, 4.5-month training. By the time they're on their own, it could be a year to year and 3 months. So if you had 2 or 3 people leave and you're now training people, naturally you're not going to be at 131 strong. So that's what the benefit of having a overhire position is, that when you anticipate somebody retiring on a particular date, you can plan ahead, do the background, hire someone ahead of time. They're waiting to go to the academy. At some point, maybe they're already in the academy. So when that officer does retire, the very minimal downtime. They're already in the FTO training program, because maybe they're a lateral officer or they're in the academy and so forth. So we cut that time down for operational efficiency if you can hire over what you're allocated to do from time to time. And this is not a new request. We've had this program in our agency before. So what do we want to accomplish in 17 and 18? Obviously, as a law enforcement agency, we want to provide for a safe community, have a positive impact on index and quality of crime. Whether it's violent crime or quality of life crime, we definitely want to have an impact and mitigate those type of crimes. And we will partner with other organizations, regionally, collaboratively, to have that positive impact. Uniform presence, downtown, in neighborhoods. We want to impact auto theft, burglary, vehicle prowls. We monitor these particular crimes very closely on a weekly, monthly basis within the police department. We allocate our resources based on crime analyst information. There's quite a bit of science to deploying our officers on a regular basis and where they're assigned. Continual regional collaboration. We can't do it alone, so we need to partner. Again, traffic safety, reducing vehicle speed in neighborhoods and school zones. And later in October, sometime in November, we'll be relocating a couple of our speed cameras, photo enforcement cameras, to Southwest Campus Drive. So we're going to expand our school zone photo enforcement to one other location. Currently, we have 3 locations. We'll be expanding school zone to Southwest Campus Drive by Sahali Middle School. And then again, we will focus on distracted driving, enforcement, and I can tell you with absolute certainty if that our officers aren't out there doing traffic enforcement, it would be absolutely chaos in a matter of days. So I think enforcement plays a critical role in keeping our community safe. Enhanced public safety, continuing our registered sex offender verification program. We'll continue to do that in 17 and 18. We'll continue to look for efficiency and using the CAPS unit to do outreach with our community. We will continue to provide high level of training. Our officers are prepared to respond to any acts of violence, and we'll continue our reality-based training. And we will continue to do professional development leadership training for our people, succession planning. We are anticipating numerous retirements in the upcoming years. Our agency is now 20 years old, and many of us came as experienced police officers. So a lot of the older officers are looking at maybe 2 or 3 years of retiring from the agency. So there will be a significant turnover. We are developing even our command level, mid-level managers within the agency. We have a commander who just recently, Commander Jones, recently graduated from the FBI NA Academy. And then also we have a commander currently going through the Northwestern University Command Staff and College at the Criminal Justice Training. So we are developing our command level people for succession planning. And here's a picture of what our positive ticket looks like that our officers issue. We went out and our officers issued positive tickets at a community event on Saturday, and it was a complete success. People absolutely loved it, the smiles on the face. So we will continue to look for opportunities to expand to do that. And our department mantra is earning the public trust. And the only way we're going to be effective as a police organization is to have that trust within our community. I think in the current environment of police-community relations, it's fragile. I think it's a continual work in progress to build that. And we feel in our police department, we have a lot of support in our community. We know that based on our citizen contacts, people communicating to us by email. And every time there's a tragedy that's impacting law enforcement, there's no shortage of food and flowers in the police department. There's people that really do care about our officers. And that I know that there's a lot of people who support us, and that's what allows our officers to do what they do day in and day out. I am prepared to answer any questions you might have.
All right, Chief, great presentation. Thank you very much. So during the course of these presentations, what I would ask each department director to do, along with Aday and Brian, is suggestions that are brought up and ideas that are brought up. I would ask, the director, Aday, and Brian, note these down, and then we can conference about this. Obviously, there'll be an issue about responding back to council as well with the requested information. So, with that said, council, any questions? Councilmember Maloney, and then Councilmember Asefa Dawson.
You can go. You might have yours on first. I think Lydia had hers on first. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, Chief, for this overview. I appreciate it very much. I have a couple of questions on the, I don't think the pages are numbered, but on the hierarchy of the police department. So I guess probably the first,
Sure,
second
I can
page.
go back.
Okay. Yeah, that one right there. You said that patrol services, calls for services are about 75,000 a year or 200 a day. Is that correct?
Right, that's right.
Is, how does that compare to other communities? I mean, local communities.
Yeah, I would say we're pretty comparable. I haven't looked at the numbers for the budget presentation, but when you look at South King County, I'd say we're probably running par.
Okay.
But obviously it differs based on, community size. Kent is a larger community than we are, Auburn's smaller. I would say that their calls for service is, in Auburn is lower, but you look at calls for service by officers, and I looked at those numbers some time ago, I think we're in that range.
Okay.
Yeah.
A couple of meetings ago, you mentioned the standard of the ratio of police officers, and I think you meant uniformed, but I'm not sure, uniformed police officers to 1,000 residents. Could you remind me what that ratio is?
Sure. One way of to measure whether you have adequate numbers or not, one way of looking at that is number of officers per 1,000 residents or citizens. So right now at 131 officers, at 95,000 being the population, we're at 1.37 officer per 1,000. And when you look at historically our agency over a 20-year period of time, we've maintained that ratio around 1.4. Now there were times when we had Prop 1 and so forth, our ratio was much higher. But as a general rule, when you look historically, we've been at 1.4. So simple math, if our population was 100,000, we would need 140 officers just to be at 1.4. Now, having said that, when you look at Seattle, their ratio per officer is going to be much higher, but it's different kind of policing. What I can tell you about this community, and having worked and lived here for a number of years, our community is growing, but not just us. When you look at the unincorporated, you look at surrounding cities like Milton, I mean, there's tremendous growth even around us, and they are all using our roads. So what I've noticed over the years is our traffic has grown tremendously in our community, population base. I mean, when we started our department, the city was 75,000. Now we're at 95,000. Sometimes it feels like it's larger than that. And when we have facilities, multifamily housing that goes into our community, we immediately feel the impact within the police organization. Because when it's high density like that, generally requires more police services. Not because a lot of times the residents are crime victims, but nevertheless, we're being dispatched quite regularly at these facilities. So we're seeing the growth and the impact.
Okay, thank you. So is there a national standard, though, something that is kind of a national barometer for that ratio?
I would tell you that the ratio
Or best
could be-
practice?
Well, I don't think, that's what I was saying, that
Okay.
it varies community to community. If it's very urban, like Seattle, and it's high rises and so forth, you're gonna
Okay.
have higher density. Tacoma's got higher ratio than Federal Way. It all depends what's going on in your community and the needs of that community. So the ratio could be anywhere between 1.2 to 1.6. I mean, when you look at the Puget Sound region, it's kind of all over the board, but I would say in general, it's probably 1.2 to 1.64 agencies surrounding the metropolitan area.
Okay. When Prop 1 was passed and, excuse me, the utility tax was raised to, I think it was 18, to increase the police department by 18 FTEs. You said that we went to about 1.4 at that point?
No,
Is
it was higher.
It was higher?
Because the population was less than, I don't know what that population base was, and we were authorized 136 plus 1, so we were at 137. So our ratio was probably then, I would
Okay.
be completely guessing, but it was probably more like 1.7 or something like that. It was
Okay,
probably
so
pretty
at
high.
that point, yes.
I do want to, I think the FTEs for the police department with Prop 1 was 16.
Okay,
FTEs.
16, I stand corrected, I guess, but
Is that
thank you.
correct? It's your budget, so.
Yeah, the 16 sounds right, Mayor, among other positions too, but.
Sure,
sounds about
that's right,
right.
there were other positions.
That's right.
But the question is, So you were at a higher ratio at that point with a lower population, and the goal was to get to 137. Did we ever get there?
I think we got there like for a short time, yes.
Okay.
And then with the recession, we started downsizing.
Okay. And we are still collecting that utility tax to this day. And I understand that the utility tax is funding those officers, but the money that funded positions before that might have been coming out of the wherever, the general fund or wherever, is gone elsewhere now. So I would like to see, and this is to the other council members, I would like to see if we could figure out a way to look at the budget to actually fund up even higher than the overhire of 2 FTEs, because to me, public safety is really, as we've stated ourselves, our biggest priority. And I don't feel as if where we are being, where we're currently staffed, and even with the overhire of 2 FTEs, in my opinion, and I'm definitely not an expert, but I hear the community saying they don't feel as if, there are enough officers. And with everything that's going on, whether it's, an anomaly or not, I feel as if we need to pay attention to this for the reasons that you've stated. I mean, our city is growing. We have traffic coming through here on a daily basis of residents that don't even live here. And we have housing that would bring in more density. So to me, it's a significant issue. And I'm going to leave that for now because I have one more question.
Actually, while you're getting that question, because I think Ade wanted to pipe in about, speak up to that particular issue.
Okay.
Regarding the utility tax, I would like to call your attention to page D13 on your budget. The Prop 1 actually is not enough as it stands now
I realize that.
to fund. Okay, I
Yeah.
just wanted to
Yeah, we've
quickly
gone over
point
that
out.
before, and I do realize that, and I appreciate you letting me know. But I think that we're at a crossroads where we need to figure out a way to fund what we need and not just say we don't have enough for it. So, okay. So I appreciate that very much today. The last question I have for you, Chief, is you mentioned the photo enforcement at Sahali Middle School. Do we have a documented reason for needing that there? Have there been accidents or a lot of speeding tickets or something during those hours?
Yeah, we've done speed study at that location. We did a speed study at one other location as well, based on quite a bit based on officer observation. Every time we go out to that location, there's no shortage of people speeding through the school zone. We've had numerous complaints about vehicles speeding through Southwest Campus Drive. The technology itself will definitely slow down vehicles. And I will say this, it's not often that we have children or, pedestrians being hit, at that particular location. And certainly we don't want that. But our technology, when you look at school zone photo enforcement, it's a prevention. It does slow people down. Overall average speed will be reduced. And when people receive one of these tickets, it's a great reminder for them to slow down. And what I like about the technology is that it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, you're driving a nice car or a clunker. I mean, the technology will catch you, and then the officer verifies that speed. And sometimes our complaints are, based on people getting those tickets. But I know that overall, it does improve safety. It's every time the light turns on, it's like having an officer there.
Great.
So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I follow up on that? Because there's 3 different areas around Sahali. There's the one right by the school, then there's one on Campus Drive coming up, and then one by Safeway. Are you talking about all 3 of those, or just?
So at Panther Lake, at first in Panther Lake, we have photo enforcement.
No, I'm not talking Panther. We were talking about Sahali.
Right. Sahali on 21st Avenue, south of 340th, we have a
Right.
school zone there next to Fred Meyer's.
Yes.
We are putting a school zone photo enforcement on Southwest Campus Drive, front of all those apartments.
Okay,
Right there where there's a crosswalk in the ball track and field. It would
where the
be right-
kids come down from the hill
That's
and
right.
cross there, and usually they have a crosswalk person with a flag.
That's a highly traveled location by kids. And the crossing guards, we've had complaints over the years for a long time. And what we're doing is we're actually reevaluating, because we're not adding more cameras. We're taking 2 cameras from 320th and Pack intersection and moving those cameras to a different location. So we're not increasing the cameras, we're just reallocating. based
Yeah, I
on
just
needs.
wanted to make sure that I knew where you were talking about. Thank you.
And if I can go back and address the staffing question, going up to 131 is more officers we've had in a long time. So we've been on a steady incline. We were at 126. We added 5, we're at 131. And after today, we hired another entry-level person today. We hired a lateral officer yesterday. Just so you know, I want the policy group to know that we're now down just 3 positions. And our goal, our administrative section, their goal is to hire the other 3 positions in the month of October, early part of November. So we should be fully staffed. We won't be fully deployed, but we're looking at, we have quite a few laterals now wanting to come to our agency. So we're looking pretty good right now. We've got 6 or 7 laterals that are actively testing with us. It'll be dependent on who we want to hire. Is it gonna be all lateral, or are we looking at maybe lateral combination? So our staffing is looking better moving forward. So I wanted to share that.
Thank you, and I just want to follow up and say I appreciate that additional information, but I still would like to have a conversation with council about that,
Sure,
about
that's a
additional
policy
officers.
decision.
Thank you.
Right. Councilmember Stephanie Dawson.
Thank you. My question was pretty much asked by Councilmember Maloney around staffing. So your attrition is, you lose, what, 3 to 4 through retirement or for whatever reason, right? Is that what you had said?
Sometimes, you know, a spouse will get a job somewhere else, and the officer then, you know, looks for a job to be closer to their spouse, or maybe something. So they leave for one reason or another, but I think we're anticipating more retirements moving forward. When you look at our agency historically, 3 or 4 people will leave in a given year.
So the 2 overhire, is that sufficient, actually, to meet the demand and the need that you're talking about?
It will keep us closer to 131 by having the overhire position, because it gives the department flexibility of anticipating vacancies and hiring over 131, planning ahead.
And so, my other question, so when you have lateral hires, they don't need to go through the academy, correct?
No, they don't, but they do need to go through a 2-week equivalency academy at the Criminal Justice Training Commission, but they don't have to go through the 5.5-month academy, no.
Okay, because I totally support your idea in terms of supporting what your need is. And actually, that was going to be my comment, so thank you very much.
Councilmember Honda, then Deputy Mayor Burbidge.
Thank you. So I have a few questions. The 1.37 per thousand, does that count including you? So every uniformed officer?
That's correct, yeah. That's uniformly done just in law enforcement communities, that you take all of the sworn, and then you do that at 95,000 people, it's 1.37. Now, in our police department, we're pretty lean in the management side, so we have 110 police office line-level officer positions, and then 21 of those positions are first-line supervisors, commanders, deputy chief, and then chief.
Okay. How many officers do we have on the COPS grant program right now, if any?
We do. I think we have 4. Yeah, 4, and I think it ends August of next year. As far as the
So
COP money being, it's a 3-year.
it's a 3-year thing, but the final year we pay the entire salary, is that how it goes?
That's correct. They augment the cost of the officers, but at some point we have to assume the cost, and it does end August of next year.
Okay. Have we, or are we eligible to apply for another COPS grant?
Absolutely. The notices come each year, and it's up to the city to look at that and whether to apply for the COPS grant or not. And there are certain conditions that you're more likely to get it if you meet those conditions, and I think we're in a good position if we did apply for a COPS grant that we could get some.
So when will we know if we will apply for that this year?
This year, For calendar, this year will be gone, but it may be for 2017, 18 calendar year, we could apply again.
Okay. And is there a limit on how many officers we can apply for at that point? Do they tell us, like, could we apply for 5? Is there a limit as to how many officers we can apply for in a COPS grant?
I don't think there's a limit, but I think they do try to distribute it accordingly by agency size and so forth. So typically when we got in COPS grants, it's, 2 to, 5 officer range.
Okay. Is it less expensive to hire a lateral officer than to hire a new officer that needs to go through the entire academy?
Depending on how you look at that. Operationally, if you're short-staffed and you need to put officers in the field quickly, you're looking at lateral officers. And lateral officers are somewhat difficult to attract and hire. So if you find the right person that's going to meet the mission of the organization, I think lateral is a generally better way to go, particularly if they're from in-state. But sometimes, depending on the lateral pool, the key thing is you want to hire the right person that's going to be a good fit for our organization and our community. But initially, lateral officers will cost more because we're bringing them in at higher pay. But on the other hand, with entry-level people, you have to pay them while they're sometimes waiting to go to the academy and training. So it could be a wash. But overall, if I had to say which is cheaper, I would say lateral police officer.
Okay. And my last question, with the increase of the multifamily homes that we have in Federal Way and the one coming online in October, November, you've talked about other cities who have denser populations needing more officers. Will we, because of the increase in multifamily homes in Federal Way, do you think we will need more officers to continue our level of service?
Yeah. I would tell you that if this community is changing, but I don't think it's changing in a manner that if we kept our ratio close to 1.4 per 1,000 residents, I think we'd be as a police chief, I could tell you, I think we're in a pretty good position.
Okay.
And yes, we are gonna have higher calls for service of multifamily housing coming in, but I don't think it's gonna be so dramatic in a manner that all of a sudden so the downside is our response time will increase. When response time increases, generally it creates frustration from citizens. There's a breaking point at some point. There are situations that occur that'll increase response time, but as more calls for service comes in, calls get stacked, they get reprioritized, and sometimes we get those complaints from time to time now, and we have to find ourselves explaining why it took so long, and this is the reason. And also the workload on our staff. There's a burnout point where if you want to impact crime and make a positive difference, you got to have some downtime for your officers so they can do some community-oriented policing, meet with citizens, work on problem-oriented policing efforts. If you're just going from call to call to call to call because the calls of service have dramatically increased and you have an increase in number of field officers, you're going to have officers burned out, you're going to have officers leaving, officers probably making more mistakes, just trying to meet that demand. So I think as management, we need to make sure that we're putting enough officers out there that we're providing good service.
It almost sounds like you're saying we need more police officers with that. And my last question, actually, I did have another one. I thought I heard the school staff say that they are asking for uniformed officers in the middle schools now, like they have in the high schools. Did I not understand that right? Are they asking for that? And can we do that if they were to ask us?
Nobody's asked me directly about that.
Okay.
But if we were to do something like that, we would need some time. I think there's too many middle schools to do it all at once, but they would have to be phased in and it'd have to be planned out. Anything's possible with allocation of additional officers, but nobody's talked to me about that. We haven't really thought through that issue.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Deputy Mayor Burbidge.
Thank you very much. I wanted to thank you, Chief Wong, for your presentation and making the realities of effective policing so clear from the necessities of looking at hiring and also the balancing act of maintaining community policing. And some of these programs that you mentioned, I think, are especially important, as you say, with the climate on a national basis, the positive tickets, the Youth Safety Academy, the shopping cart recovery, and all of the efforts. But I wanted to ask you in particular about the Youth Safety Academy. You mentioned that this has occurred at Federal Way High School, and it's anticipated perhaps to do more at other high schools, and I'm just curious as to the direction that that might take.
Sure. This idea actually came from one of our staff. She was a teacher before she became a crime analyst prevention specialist with the police department, and that's Lindsay Spray. And so she brought this idea to management saying, you know, what do you think about reaching out to one of the schools and doing a pilot project of providing a youth safety academy, much like a citizens academy? And we thought, great idea. And she was willing to devote the energy and the time to do it. She took that on, and the Citizens Academy really actually was held right here at City Hall. So we just did one high school. We had kids that came. We partnered with South King Fire and Rescue, so the kids got an opportunity to go to the fire station, and they did whole sorts of stuff. We showed them, you know, the bomb vehicle, the robot, and they absolutely loved it. Based on that positive experience, we're looking to expand that this summer. It'll be held right here at City Hall, and we'll do probably multiple schools. The school loves the idea as well, so we partner with the school district. So this will be a positive way of bridging that. So I hope that gives you a little more information about the program.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you so much, Chief, for this great presentation and for all that you guys are doing. Clearly, this is a very important period of time for law enforcement now and in the future. I wanted to kind of point my colleagues in the direction of the 2017-18 agency goals. I guess would be perhaps the first slide, and yourself, Chief. The second point, and really the question is, I want you to kind of expand on what does this mean on both of the bullet points of uniform police presence downtown and in neighborhood to impact auto theft, burglary, and vehicle prowls. And of course, I'm interested in that because I know that you hear of burglaries that happened, and so I want to kind of find out more information about that. And then, of course, the second point as well, specifically with drugs, because I think it's safe to say that a lot of the crime that we get rarely results in either domestic violence or it's because of drug violence. So what do you mean by that, and what do we hope to accomplish by that? Because that's one of the things I'm kind of looking at in the future, because I really kind of want to find out how do we combat both of those factors, but really drugs, because you've mentioned that in here. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of parts to what you were asking. One of the things that we've done really well as an organization, and arrested individuals are responsible for committing burglary. Even this year, when you look at our burglary numbers, certainly looking at historically our burglary numbers, we're pretty low. So we're really feel good about that, because when your home is violated, it has a tremendous impact on our citizens, and those numbers are good. When I talk about uniform presence, we'll continue to have our special operations unit officers on bicycles in downtown. We have 2 enduro motorcycles, 250cc, that you may have seen them ride around town, and BPAs. So we want to have high visibility of police downtown. We have a substation downtown that our special operations unit and our traffic officers work out of. So we want to do that, and we also want to be in the neighborhoods, and that's part of community-oriented policing, is that we want downtime for officers so that they can go into the neighborhoods and, you know, when they're not on a call, and meet with neighbors and drive around the streets as well. And the last thing you talked about, drugs. Yes, drug is a huge driver for crime, and many of our gun violence is related to drug and drug rips and so forth. So even our shoplifters, quite often property crimes, burglars, I would say maybe even up to 80% of our crime is somehow connected to drug. And while I'm talking about this, I know Councilmember Moloney mentioned something about anomaly, and maybe it's on your mind about the recent homicide. And the homicides that we've had in our community. And what I want to share with you is that the homicides that we had, one in April, the 3 that we had in May, I would tell you that certainly unusual circumstance. That's an unusual occurrence for us. I know there's questions publicly being asked about, the progress of this investigation. What I could tell you is that we do have person of interest. In persons of interest, we are making progress, and I can assure you that we will be recommending charges. However, the investigators are holding the facts very close to their chest, and when they're ready, and they're working very closely with the King County Prosecutor's Office, when they're ready to recommend charges, they're going to do that. I want to thank all of you for your patience, the mayor, council, for your patience, your understanding. I know it's almost been 5 months, but we are making progress. We will do that. And I'll also tell you that, yes, we've had 8 homicides a year, but this, even violent crime, it's cyclical. It's up and down. We've had years, in the last 10 years, when you look at 10 years, we've had years where we had 8 homicides. I think what's drawn so much attention to Federal Way is that with the high-profile crime of Adam Gutierrez's case has drawn more attention. But there are years that crime is up and down. It's cyclical. And homicide is no different. And so what I'm going to tell you is that, I believe that what happened in April and May, that was 4 homicides. And typically, on average, we have about 4 homicides a year. So I just wanted to share that with you. I don't think it's an anomaly. I don't think this is going to be a continual year after year issue, because that was a kind of unusual occurrence in our community.
Okay, Councilmember Moore, then Councilmember Duclos.
And I appreciate that note, Chief, and I know that you made the statement of, the fact that we're having a lot of violence because of drug violence, but in terms of expanding on what is the plan, what's the vision of how we're going to work with to try to end drug violence?
It's got to be a systems approach, and there's social problem, systemic problem. To rely on police to address those issues alone is nearly impossible. I've done this at Mayor's Neighborhood Connection meetings. There's so many issues that we got to deal with in our community, in our region, to have an impact on crime, gun-related crimes. We're always going to respond, investigate, and arrest those who are responsible for those type of crimes. That's one component. But in order to have a healthy community, there's so many pieces. You got to deal, the poverty issue. I'm not just talking about Federal Way, but just overall. It doesn't matter where in America. The education component, the unemployment issue. If you have a healthy community where people are working and doing well, thriving, they're less likely to engage in crime and violent crime. So I think it's got to be this. So we got to work together with government agencies, social agencies, the schools. There's so many moving parts, and I would say police clearly has an important role, but we're one piece of the puzzle.
Okay, Councilmember Duclos.
First of all, I want to thank our police department and you, Chief, for everything that you've done for the community and that you keep doing. This isn't a problem just Federal Way has. It's all over the state of Washington. You look at Kent, you look at Renton. It's happening everywhere. It's all over the country. Something's going on in our country. I don't know what it is. I've puzzled over it for a long time, but crime is up all over, and I'm not sure what's going on, and I'm not sure how we stop it. I think maybe as a community we all need to be working on it, not just the police department, but I think all of us need to get engaged. We need to be working with our youth and show them that there are different ways besides gangs. I remember when I was young, gangs were a big problem, but they were in the cities, the big cities. They weren't in the rural areas. Now they're all over, and we have to show our youth and our families that there's a different life that will be better for you if you follow this path, not that path. But it takes all of us to do that. And I hate to use that old saying, it takes a village, but it really does. And so just to say, what is the police going to do about it, I think it isn't right. I think you guys are doing a fantastic job. You're doing the best you can with what you have. I'd love to give you more, but we don't have all of the resources in the world either. And I don't think it's legal yet to print our own dollars, but if we could, I would. So my hats are off to you. And if there are things that we as a council can do to help you, let us know. Thank you.
All right, council. Thank you, Councilmember Duclos. Councilmember Malloy.
Yes, thank you. I do want to have a little follow-up, and I agree with everything Councilmember Duclos said in regard to our police department, and our officers are just top-notch, in my opinion. So everything that is done on a daily basis, and nights too, of course, everything you do is just so much appreciated. And it's, in fact, that's why I think it's important that we support you as much as we can, in the ways that we can. And to Deanie's point about this is more than the response has to be more than our police department, which is why we've started the Violence Prevention Coalition, and hopefully we will get some measurable results out of that, or at least something that we can that's actionable and that we can actually work on. I want to I just feel compelled to respond to one point that was made about that we have 8 homicides this year, but we've had 8 homicides in years past, or at least in one year in the recent past. And I think that there are some really significant differences. And my understanding, if you're referring to the year I'm thinking of, there were 5 homicides in one event, and that was I can't remember. I think it was a domestic violence situation.
That's correct.
And so here we've got 8 separate events, as far as we understand. Maybe they were related somehow, I don't know. But they're all separate events. And as Councilmember Duclos pointed out, there is something going on in this country. And I think to say that, we think it may be something that passes, we don't know. And I personally would really like to be prepared in case things do continue to escalate. And that's the last I'll say about it. I think you know how I feel about it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, council, any other comments? Great discussion, council. Thank you. And Chief, thank you so much for the work and for your department and your command staff and every one of the folks that work downstairs on our behalf. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, and more to come. All right, now moving on to economic development. We've got Tim Johnson here to talk about what we've got going in economic development.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council members, Tim Johnson. Tonight, you've been sitting for an hour and a half, so I'll be very judicious in my time. I have no hierarchical chart. You're looking at the one and only person who does economic development for you. So as identified in the strategy that we did called Some Assembly Required, our mission was pretty simple. It was to attract and retain businesses, investment, and jobs. And our goals were pretty simple and focused. There's one there that's in the middle that says alignment of reuse of the former warehouse corporate campus to next generation jobs. I want to expand on that just for a moment, because I think if you go back and you read Some Assembly Required, it defines what next generation jobs are. But for the purpose of our discussion this evening, I just want to reiterate the fact that that refers to jobs created or supported by the rapid increase in growth of information, increased reliance on computers, and new technologies, and particularly like autonomous related technologies today in whatever industry that we're working in. And those manifest themselves in our clusters and targeted industries that we're working on. As you can see, everything else is formulated in those goals around the efforts that you've been working on: branding, the university initiative, and business recruitment. And I think the key thing that I've learned here from you in 2 years is this. This job just isn't focused on economic development. This job is also heavily focused on redevelopment. And I spend about 50% of my time working the redevelopment side of the house on this. And I think maybe that might come to a surprise to all of you, but it shouldn't, because that town center and the efforts that go on we're at basically build out. So when I'm talking to companies and locating them here, it takes longer. In the anatomy of a business recruitment for this community, because you are a build-out community and surrounded by other build-out communities, we then have to look at redevelopment. And that means assembling properties for them, meaning that they do that, but they're asking and requesting information from us. And it elongates the process in terms of what can be done under our land use codes and directions. And so as we go through this process, there are things that I'm working on for you and have been working on for you, and you know what those are because we've provided you with that information. They may take 4 to 5 years to manifest themselves in terms of new tax base and in terms of jobs. I don't know what else to tell you. It's a unique situation and one that Federal Way has to deal with. Our accomplishments as a city, I think, have been tremendous. We worked on the town center project, got that RFP out. You know about the upcoming process or timeline for the hotel negotiations. The university initiative has gone through several efforts, and you've received a report on that, and we'll be working on that shortly. The branding initiative. Business recruitment and retention, one of the things that I promised to do for you, and I have been, is attending your FedRAC meetings and providing you with a quarterly update on all business activity and trying to ensure that there are benchmarks and performance measures associated with those, and I will come, as you'll see here in a minute, with a final report on that. And then I guess the significant effort is you go back and you look at the strategy, some assembly required. The outreach and meetings with companies and property owners have been significant. We've brought some of those property owners to you during the course of the year to talk to you about it, and we intend to do that so in moving forward in 2017 and 18. I think one of the key innovations here, and I must tip my hat to city staff that did the update for the website and the new improved website content management software program. It's really easy to use. I mean, it really is easy, and I've been able to get the time to go in and rebuild the economic development component of the city website, and it is really paying dividends because so much of the information that I had to take earlier on through phone calls and things are now being assimilated through the folks of reaching out and using that information. The other one that's very helpful to us is our relationship with Highline Community College and the Small Business Development Services. We've been working intimately on a capital analysis, a survey to actually understand what the demands are here of Federal Way businesses and what their needs are. A tremendous amount of my time is spent on Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. That was kind of thrown my direction. I did not see that in the job description when I first moved here, but I've taken that on, and you folks have had a history of great success in programs, and those are coming to us again, as I've reported to you before. In FedRAC, there will be the applications for the 2020 U.S. Olympic trials, along with the 2019, 2020, or 2021 NC2A swimming and diving championships for men and women, and then, of course, the 2018 Special Olympic U.S. Games. One of the great compliments I want to pay to you is to Jerry Lynn Clerk. I met Jerry Lynn when I got here, and there was a discussion of so much of your sister city programs. But one of the things that we quickly recognized is that in my previous experience and the enthusiasm of Jerry Lynn, there was a great need to ensure that there were protocols put in place for you so that when you greeted these folks from other countries, you had everything in line with what you felt was appropriate to host somebody from overseas. And so as you notice today, we have flags of their countries when they're here. The welcome banners are not only in English, but they're in their language. We always have coffee, tea, and water services. We have an exchange of cultural gifts, and we have digital presentations here in the chambers for you, and we also try to provide as much background and information as we can on the delegations to you in advance so that you can build that kind of relationship that you want. And so I want to thank Jerry Lynn Clark very, very much for that. And lastly, I want to talk quickly about the stakeholder relations. There are so many organizations on here that I work with on a weekly basis, if not a daily basis. But I think it's very important for you to know that we work not only diligently with our Chamber of Commerce here, but also with regional organizations in the pursuit of our efforts. Focus for 2017 and 18, pretty succinct. It'll look, I'll give you a new work plan starting the first of the year, but it'll again be focused on the town center. We need to get to the rest of that development as we move through it. So we'll be working on an RFP that I will bring to you, I hope, before the end of the year, if not directly right after the first of the year for your approval for the rest of the project and remaining property. Branding, I will continue to support you all in whatever you want to do and provide your staff support for that activity. Same thing with the university initiative. Before I get that work program done, I will come and sit with each and every one of you to make sure that what is in that work program is what you want to get achieved on those two particular items. So don't think that I'm going to be a maverick and just go out and do this. I'm going to take a great time to deal with that. The reuse of the former Warehouser site, as most of you know, I did a tremendous report for you all in 2014 called the Conditions and Considerations Report. It is online, but if you want hard copies, I think you all have hard copies, but if you need it again, please let me know. And I spent considerable time working on understanding what that all meant to us and what are the key issues that we have to deal with. So it isn't, though, that I haven't been involved with it, but you must recognize that when you're dealing with a variety of projects, the priorities came up to the town center and moving that RFP and moving this negotiation along to be successful. So we kind of had to balance things. Again, the LTAC and, of course, those applications that I just defined for you are significant moving forward to us. And continued business recruitment and retention. Ladies and gentlemen, I must readily admit there is a lot of interest, and it's not just percolated by the reuse of the former Warehouser site. As you all may know, the mall, the Commons Mall, is in escrow, and we're spending considerable amount of time working with those who are interested in making that purchase. And so that takes up a lot of time because you have to go through and work with them to understand the demographics of the community and what our future is here. Again, we run on a pretty lean budget in economic development and federal way. Our budget is just about 236, 237. If you look on the budget document, it's like 237. But I think we had an adjustment. We've had an adjustment because there was $300 in interest that came from the $100,000 branding that was somehow got into economic development and not the council budget. I'm not sure how that happened. I'm not intending to say that. That money is under your control and not mine. So 236, which 197 is for salaries, wages, and benefits. The remainder goes to pass-through in support of Highline SBDC, Seattle King County EDC, and 1% for overhead. I must admit, you all know where I'm from. This is the smallest economic budget I've ever worked on in my entire life, but I must tell you, I think we get every penny, nickel, and dime out of it. Opportunity list. There was a reduction in the budget, excluding the $100,000 for branding. And it was a total of $25,000. $5,000 was for the advertisement for the Chamber Relocation Guide, which we use, and I think it is a very important document. I use it constantly with business inquiries that come here and also for our business recruitment effort. And then we also had a $20,000 allocation for site location consultant, which helps us on identifying companies that are looking outside of Washington State that we are constantly working with, and it proves to be a very value investment, I think, for us. And so that kind of gives you an overview of the economic development program and where we're headed and where we've come from. I'll be more than happy to take any questions you may have.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So I have a few, and there's no rhyme or reason. Branding, I know we're going to be starting that soon, like, right?
We're going to reinitiate that, yeah.
In the next month or so?
Yes.
Okay. And are they just gonna start where they stopped?
Well, I think that we need to sit down and talk with the council members and figure out which direction we
Okay.
want to go in.
All right,
Because I've got some thoughts and suggestions, but I want to hear from you guys as well.
okay, good
Where we
idea.
find ourselves. Councilmember Duclos has a
I
question.
just want to add to that. When you talk to us, I think we ought to talk together as a group instead of one by one, because there were probably so many different ideas generated that nothing felt like it was cohesive.
So maybe a study session?
I would-
I
Do it,
would
address
think
that.
a study session would be great.
As soon as possible.
I think we just addressed Councilmember Maloney's question.
Okay.
Light went off.
Well, okay, let me just say, I felt like we were on a path, and I don't see any reason to change it. That's all I was gonna say. I mean, we had a direction, we've been through this many, many times. We knew where we were going. We've paid a considerable amount of money so far for where they are, and we already stopped the process for several months now, and to delay it any further, in my opinion, is a waste of the community's
Oh, sure, I'm not talking about
resources.
delay. It's about direction.
Well, direction to me has been clear, so, just saying.
Well, I think we could have, we could talk about what we've seen and how we would like to go
That's
forward on
fine.
that.
I mean, I get it, but I'm just saying,
I know, we
we've been
don't-
through
yeah.
it so many times. I
I'm
mean,
not,
this is
I'm
going
not
on
talking about that.
3
I'm-
years.
I'm just trying to give them some better direction than when they met with us individually or
Yeah.
only with two. They had so many different things. I think if we got together and said, this is what we really want you to address, then let them go.
Let's just get going on it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. Well, we stopped as a result of the homicides that occurred in May, and I thought it would be very incredibly poor form to be talking about rebranding a city when we had multiple people be murdered in our city,
Yeah,
and
there's no
that's why we stopped that.
disagreement with that
Okay.
at all.
Okay,
okay.
okay.
Can I, okay.
Please.
You talked about the conditions and the information you put together on the sale of the Weyerhaeuser property. In that information that you put together, did you talk about the concomitant agreement in there at all?
It did, briefly, so that people understood what it was, didn't get into a great amount of time, because it is a very large document, and directed people to come to the city and go to the planning department to ask for that, to understand more about it.
Okay,
So as a component of that document, it provided resources for people to further explore. So what it was, even though it was 35, 36 pages in length, it was a tickler, if you will, for people to understand what resources were out there to further explore.
okay. Last year you talked to, at least to me, about Kaiser buying group health and about a potential hospital in Federal Way. Has there been more discussion with Kaiser about that, and is that ongoing?
As of last week, I spoke with a representative from the Insurance Commissioner's office, and they were supposed to submit their report, the Insurance Commissioner's office report on the acquisition.
On the state, for the state of Washington?
That's correct. And because I had followed this, as I told you, as well as to other council members, that I would be attending those insurance commissioners' meetings when I could, and I had. They had identified that they were going to release that report shortly after Labor Day, and so that hadn't appeared. So I followed up on it, and they now inform me that it will go something like this, that the report will come the first part of November, and then shortly before the end of the month that the insurance commissioner will release his individual comments on it. So I'm kind of sitting in abeyance right now, waiting to see what that all means.
Okay.
I wish I had more insight to what maybe some of those issues might be. Whether there is an issue of antitrust or not, I don't know. I will tell you this. Since Kaiser is headquartered in California, it still relies on the insurance commissioner of California to approve this as well. And we've been following that too. So there has been no movement out of California either. So we may be pushed in a position of a longer timetable than what we originally expected.
Okay. And 2 more questions, and then I'll be done. Baden Sports site is still empty. I drove by there about 4 weeks ago. Are you working on helping to get that?
Yeah, you know, I guess I could spill the beans, but I may get chastised by the company that has said we're not ready to make a public announcement yet. So I don't know how you feel about me saying anything tonight. I don't have to.
I just want to know that maybe
Yeah,
something is
there is.
moving.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, you know, the last report I gave you was in middle of July, listed everything. And I'd been working on it, and I was actually hoping that they were going to announce at that time, and they didn't. It is significant. I was out there this week. They have all of their equipment delivered. It's sitting in huge crates. And I would suspect that they'll make an announcement probably sometime after the first of the year.
Okay.
Tim, can you tell us what just general industry
Yeah,
that,
sure.
or
It's a
general?
food processor.
What's that?
It's a food processor.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very. You'll be very happy. All of you will be very happy.
Does it smell?
What kind of food? What kind of food?
Dairy? I'm going to take it very high. I'm going to say it's a dairy-based product.
Okay.
And you folks will be very happy with it, and it does create a lot of really good jobs for this community.
Ooh, that would be good.
And so,
All right, as
I'll
long
leave
as it
it at
doesn't
that.
smell.
I'm sorry.
What are the estimated number of jobs?
That one is almost 100.
Oh, cool.
Okay,
And-
so announcement to follow. We don't want to, obviously,
I mean, I'll be more than happy. I'll take the chastising for it, but.
That's okay.
You understand.
When I drive by there and I look at it, I think, oh gosh, it's been so long since they left. And, you know,
May I just inform you that the Schindler family who own that building, we worked very closely with them over the last year. And they were so shocked and surprised. And we had multiple companies that were interested, and we kept sending them to them. And they said they just couldn't believe that a city would do this. They were just elated.
I appreciate you doing that. When we have our sister city visitors or our university visitors from the other countries, and we're here talking to them, I would love to see some kind of a package put together with information about the city in both English and whatever language they speak, and more little gifts instead of the pin that we give them, something that when they go back to their university, they can show, their friends and family information about the city of Federal Way. It's a really good opportunity to talk about who we are and what we do and encourage them to come back again. And then my last thing is, I know we're talking about increased revenue, and that's not going to happen overnight. I think we have to be really very realistic about planning for increased revenue, but knowing that it isn't a fast thing. We just have to be prepared for that. So thank you for what you do. I appreciate it.
all right, Deputy Mayor Burbridge, and then, Deputy Mayor Burbridge, and then I'll wait to see if there's any lights are on. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Tim, for your hard work. And chairing the Lodging Tax Committee, I'm very much aware of all of the intricacies of planning in that area and the complex scheduling and application processes. It's voluminous. But separate from that, I'm interested in particular in the Highline College funding that we have been doing and how it relates to services for our residents and the value of that. I'm just interested in more detail if that's available.
It's a great program. And it's one that is nationwide, and we're lucky enough to have their support and assistance here through Highline. And I work with them constantly. The key issues that we're dealing with are really small business, startups, people who don't have a penny to their name, but are actually thinking about trying to start a business here in Federal Way, or for those that maybe have a business but are small, between 3 to 5 employees, and are needing to grow and want to grow their company. They play a key role in helping those. They're handcuffed, and that is by virtue of the fact that their funding in part comes from the federal government. The federal government preempts them from releasing names to us and to other cities that help support the Small Business Development Center to actually know who they are. So I have no idea who we're helping. That's the number one issue. And I've voiced my concerns over the years, just not here in Federal Way with the Small Business Administration. It is not the SBDC. Please, there's a delineation here. The SBDC is a separate program that's been set up in each state across the country. But their master is the Small Business Administration, federal government. And it is that relationship that handcuffs them from releasing this information. So I can't, even if I wanted to, or even if their director wanted to, they can't. They can't release that information, and I don't even get to see it. What I have been able to procure for you, and you've seen it in reports that I've given to you at FedRAG, and the director of the SBDC, Rich Shockley, appears with me, is that at least give you a category of what type of business that they're working with here in Federal Way. Now, in some cases, you can pretty much, sometimes you can guess at what it is, because there aren't that many businesses like that nature in Federal Way. But on the other hand, it says a retailer. Well, what kind of retailer? Well, if I told you what retailer it is, you'd know who it is, and so it preempts them from doing that. That's a drawback, because I'm sure that you folks, as conscientious as you are, you'd love to go out and talk with these folks. And quite frankly, I'd love to have you go out and talk with these folks, but I can't find out who they are. So it makes it very, very difficult. That's the number one problem with that. Sure, I'd like to fund them more, but we fund them to the tune through both the general fund of the $20,000, which is lower than what we used to fund them. We were at $22,500 2 years ago in 2015. We went $20,000 last year, and then recommending $20,000 again in our budget this year. But they also have another program over there, Fast Tracks, which we fund through not only general fund but also CDBG. And if I'm not incorrect, and I need to go talk with Jeff Watson, I think between the general fund and CDBG allocations, we're somewhere around $105,000 a year to Highline College for the programs. And the number one issue that we're working on together, as I said, was that capital survey demand study. Because Janet Yellen created, as I told you before, and maybe you don't remember this, is that she created when she was the president at the San Francisco Fed, she created something called the EQ2, Equity Equivalent Line of Credit Program, that went out beyond and above the Community Reinvestment Act, that forces all financial institutions, either full-service banks, credit unions, savings and loans, community development financial institutions, to set aside money to loan to municipalities in lieu of community development block grant money that you use for your revolving loan fund that maybe Scott will be talking about in the CD portion of the budget, to use that money, because that is far easier to get. It has far less restrictions to it, and it's a far better program. And we have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is a demand for small business needs here beyond and above what banks are providing right now. And we're starting to see that. And what we really find is that when women are trying to open businesses here in South King County, it's very difficult for them to get financing. Very, very difficult for them to get bank financing. And so this would be a great tool for us to have. And it has a very low liability and exposure issue to it. It's a good program. So I hope that answers your question, Deputy Mayor.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, so several months ago in a FedRAC meeting, I believe it was Jeff Watson who was explaining about the $105,000 that were going to this program. And he, through a series of questions by different council members, he stated that although Federal Way is funding that program, there are many small businesses that do not come from Federal Way. They might come from surrounding areas that are taking advantage of it, as well as there are, regardless of whether they're Federal Way or surrounding area small businesses, businesses that have gone there and gotten the assistance they've needed for one business and then started a second business and gone back and gotten assistance for the second business. And to me, both of those were problematic, because that is funding that is coming from Federal Way to, number one, support businesses in other cities where their cities should probably be supporting them. And secondly, the fact that my understanding of that program, because I used to work at Highline and I worked closely with them,
Right.
my understanding of that program was that it was for first-time new business, like new business owners of a new entity, for people who were learning the ropes of how to run a new business. So if you learn the ropes in your first business, I'm not sure that you should be able to come back and learn the ropes for your second business, because it's in large part it's the same thing. So I just have concerns about us providing the funding for that.
Yeah, no, you're exactly correct on one of those. And I give you an example of one I think that we talked about, and that was a husband and wife team that were from Federal Way. And they opened their business, they got assistance, and then they opened their business in Tacoma. And that's a good case in point. It's kind of like, whoa, wait a minute, what are we doing here? This is the kind of reason why I've explained to you that I'd like to see that information. I think it's important that I ask all of you on the council to ask your congressional representative to see if there can be some reforms made on this in order to help create this greater efficiency and effectiveness with this program. On the other hand, I do want to clarify one thing. There are two different types of programs. There is the standardized SBDC program, which people can repeatedly go back, whether they're startup or new or been in existence, they can go and get help and assistance. So that's what we support through the $20,000 contribution. And those all have to be Federal Way businesses. And I follow that, real closely. It's the other one that sets up that we get through CDBG, where it gets a little squirrely out there, and I certainly agree with you, and we need to tighten that up somehow. And that's a policy issue, and I would be more than honored to work with you and the council to see what we can do on that. But I think the SBDC program for both new and existing businesses and multiple services that they get at no matter what level they are at and the maturity of their company is always a good one, and I'm very much appreciative of that.
Great, well, thank you.
All right, council, any other questions? Tim? All right, thank you, Tim. Great job. Appreciate it. Okay, now, moving on to Human Resources. Gene Stanley.
Well, Well, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. I'm here to just go over the Human Resources proposed budget. So this is the organization chart for the Human Resources Department. We have the HR manager, 2 HR technicians, and a part-time HR admin. 1 HR technician serves as the Civil Service Secretary, Chief Examiner, does the Workers' Comp, Federal Way Retirement System Board, Safety Committee, Training, and Wellness Committee as well. The other technician is doing benefits administration for the most part, assists with the ACA compliance issues, maintains, updates and maintains the HRS system with the payroll, also works with the wellness program, and monitors the budget and payments, and does records management and PDAs. They're also both cross-trained, so when one's gone, the other can pick up the pieces while they're gone. Our admin is the first point of contact for the division, and she deals with a lot of the internal and external customers, and does recruitments, intakes applications, corresponds with everyone via letter, phone, and email. So the goals and objectives of the HR department is to balance fiscal stewardship with employee welfare, attract and retain a highly qualified, diverse workforce, foster amicable employee labor relations, promote employee wellness, safety, productivity, and high performance, ensure compliance with laws and regulations, and maintain consistency and fairness when implementing policies, decisions, and direction. Our accomplishments for 2015 and 16, we managed the self-insured medical plans, and this year we had to work with the benefits consultant because group health is eliminating the Alliant plan, so we had to design a new PPO plan for 2017. We also monitor the temporary employees' hours to ensure compliance with the Affordable Care Act and if they become eligible for medical. We manage the workers' compensation claims, excuse me, the light duty program, and also return to work. We had 57 claims to date when I was looking up this data. We also manage over 400 Wellness Your Way accounts. Those are online accounts, over 200 biometric screenings per year. And then we have quarterly committee meetings to evaluate and modify the wellness program as needed. We've coordinated 123 recruitment processes. That's over 4,300 applications, including 760 applications for the police department alone. We've welcomed 54 regular full-time and part-time employees, and we have about 11 processes in progress right now. We've hired 160 temporary and seasonal employees to date. And then with labor relations, we are in negotiations still with 3 of our groups. We have reached agreement with 1 of them. I do hope to have agreement with the other 3 by the end of the year. And we monitor seasonal employee hours for eligibility for Teamsters memberships, since now if they hit a certain threshold on their hours, they do become Teamsters member. So for the upcoming year, we really don't have any new program requests. We just plan to maintain status quo, make sure we're staying in compliance with everything that we need to. Of course, if Kaiser Permanente takes over group health, that will add some additional work that we'll need to look at. We'll have to wait and see what that could potentially be, and also educate the employees of any changes as well.
All right, Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you. I wanted to thank you for all your hard work, you and your staff. You do a lot with a small staff,
Yeah.
so thank you.
You bet.
Okay, great, thank you. Council, any other questions, comments? Jean, thank you so much for all you do,
Okay, you bet. Thanks.
you and your staff. Okay, now we're moving on to the city clerk's office. Stephanie Courtney.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council. My name's Stephanie Courtney. As you know, I'm the city clerk. I'm a little nervous. This is not my thing to do, public speaking, as you know, and truth be told, my colleagues might be taking bets if I actually make it through this, so we'll just see. The city clerk's office is actually a division of the mayor's office.
We got some money up here on it, too.
Yeah, I don't doubt that, and probably in the back room as well. My portion of the budget can be found in your document, in your budget book on page C20 and C21. So I'm just going to lightly go over that. So the city clerk's office is staffed by 2.5 FTEs as shown on this chart. That is myself as 1 FTE, my deputy city clerk, another full-time employee, and we do have an administrative assistant at part-time. This org chart, I'm not going to read it through. You can peruse it if you like. Highlights the general workflow of our office. We are very much cross-trained because there's only 2.5 of us doing kind of everything. So it's on a daily basis what is coming up and what is going out. On C20 and 21, you can see our budget basically is reflected in 3 separate components, which is personnel costs, intergovernmental, which is election costs and King County costs. Those are nothing that we control. It's basically we're billed from King County, and it is what it is. We don't have really any say in that. Services and charges is the other chunk of that. That includes codification services through code publishing, legal notices through the Federal Mirror, offsite storage and on-site shredding through Iron Mountain, and hearing examiner costs through Ulbrichts and Associates. So our highlights and accomplishments from 2015 and 16. We've processed 355 city contracts or agreements, processed 87 applications to volunteer citizen advisory boards and commissions. We facilitated 61 of those to council appointments to the citizen boards and commissions. Received, processed, and tracked 638 public records requests. These are for city hall records only, does not include court or police records. So this is simply people looking for building permits to a search of email records. It's just anything city hall related. I've prepared 87 sets of official city council meeting minutes, regular and special meetings. And my deputy and I together have performed 209 acts of notarial service for city documents and citizen requests. We do continue to train staff and implement the Scan and Toss program. Excuse me. The Parks Department, Community Center, Community Development, and the Finance Department are currently utilizing this and beginning that program is where the state archivist has allowed us to scan into Laserfish some of our longer retention documents, and then we can actually toss the actual document as long as they're scanned in as good or better than the original version, saving us on offsite costs in the future. And our deputy city clerk, she has attended her 2nd year of week-long training to get her CMC through the Northwest Municipal Clerks Association. That's quite a big deal for her. I did want to highlight the public records request. It's a very timely update. We see a lot of news updates and things like that about public records requests gone crazy. This kind of shows you through our office. Again, this is just for City Hall records, does not include police or court. What we're at, I did this, I believe, last Thursday, maybe Friday morning. As of today, we are at 311. So from Friday to Wednesday, we've had 11 more requests come in. So they're coming in fast and hard. So 2006, as you see below, is trending 25% over 2015, 31.67 over 2014, and we're up 45% in requests from 2013. So goals and objectives for our office. I'm sure you guys appreciate the smooth proceedings of the City Hall meetings, special and regular. It's a high priority of myself. Advocating for increased participation in the Scan and Toss program to save those costs on offsite storage and kind of slowing down the sending of records offsite. They're much easier to get at when we have requests. If they've been scanned in, we don't have to search boxes and bring 20 boxes on site when we can easily have them indexed into the Laserfish system and pull them up as we need them. Again, facilitate and assist staff with the disclosure of public records. Continue to meet or exceed timelines and expectations of the council agenda and agenda packets. And finally, increase training and regional networking for myself and my staff is a big priority for the next couple years. That's all I have. If you have any specific questions.
Councilmember Honda.
Thank you. I want to thank you for all you do because you guys are really busy. How long does it take if someone were to request public records, disclosure? And how much of your time, your staff time, is spent on these requests?
So public records requests vary very much. So they all come into our office, we route them into our system, and then we farm them out to one representative in each department. So say someone asks for a building permit, we send it to the one-person community development, they assign it to staff, and then we track it to make sure that someone has been contacted within the 5 days required. If we need to order an offsite box, say they want a record from 1992 or something, we may have to order offsite records, so we can extend that. Normally, simple requests we take care of. Some are handled over the counter, so that day, the next day, within the 5 days. Some are extended because of staffing levels, maybe a week or 2 weeks. Then we have ones where we're giving installments, and we're giving like 3 or 4, 10 installments, because staff can only work as fast as they can. Nobody here has a job that's completely dedicated to responding to public records requests, except for possibly my deputy, who is probably 85% of her day lately is records requests. So in our office is simply just sending, confirmation letters or extension letters, or helping staff pull documents, or, searching through emails, assigning them out to the departments, things like that. If someone requests any and all emails from, say, a certain subject matter, so they all get dumped into a file, someone has to look at each individual one and say, this is from a public works department, this is from a community development department, this is from the law department. Then we take those and then send those to the departments, then they have to review them for redactions, create a redaction log. It's a big monster of a project. So, and then multiply that times, we receive 5 new a day or something.
Is there a fee to whoever's requesting these?
Unfortunately, the state does not allow for that. We can charge 15 cents per page. However, if it's an electronic document that we have electronically, we're not allowed to charge for it.
Okay.
If we're scanning the document in, we can charge per what we would charge for the hard copy. So we could charge a scanning fee, I guess, to create it into an electronic format, but if they're emails, we do not charge for anything. So basically, this is just taking up huge amounts of staff time.
Okay, thank you. And you're doing a great job up there.
We try, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Moore and then Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Stephanie, as I always like to say, you rock at your job and around City Hall, and I know you're a valuable asset here
Thank you.
in Federal Way. And I appreciate your goals and objectives for 2017 and 18, especially specifically with the scan and toss. I think that'll certainly help in making the process a lot more lean and making it more faster and quicker. Have you ever looked at what are other cities doing when it comes to this type of public requests? Are there faster, better ways of best practices of getting information out there quicker? Because this sounds like a lot of time and energy, and I'm a believer that there's innovative tools out there and making that faster and quicker.
As far as the scan and toss program, or as far as responding to public records requests?
Responding to public records.
So public records requests, I think that we do an outstanding job across the board. We're a really lean staff, and so we really try to monitor. We don't have deadlines that pass. Myself and my deputy, we are very type A, have our lists. We are very good about monitoring things. It's hard because staff is doing their job, so they're helping at the permit counter. They're doing their normal job, and then they're assigned these huge records requests on top of that. It is what it is. We're just doing the best that we can. I don't know that other cities are doing any better than we are. I know I was at City of Kent just the other day helping with the interview process, and they didn't even have Laserfish. So they're not even to the point where they're scanning records. So, I don't exactly know. I know everybody is having the issue with public records. It's come up at AWC, it's come up at, clerk conventions, all kinds of stuff, people are talking about it.
Councilmember Maloney, then Councilmember Duclos.
Thank you. And I just have to agree that you guys are doing a wonderful job, so thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
When you talk about the number of requests that you have here, those are just every request that comes in is the next
number.
one. It's a number. So it doesn't even talk about the magnitude of the.
No.
Okay. So you could have a request that is for one document or one that is for
Yeah.
years worth of documents.
Yeah.
Okay.
We did participate in a state survey with the police department probably 6 to 8 months ago. They did this big, huge survey that took weeks and weeks and weeks for us to get all of our detail together, and they've done nothing with it that I know of. But that's the hard thing, is really quantifying what a records request is, because it could be, you know, I need a copy of an incident report from the community center. Well, like, here you go, check that one off.
Right.
And then another one is, I want any and all records from 1992 to, you know, current on this subject. So then not only we're searching emails, we're trying to find boxes of information, and we really strive to be as accurate as possible. And so our job in the clerk's office isn't to necessarily look through all the boxes, but we're helping staff manage the process and getting extensions out and saying, what can you get me? We'll do an installment. We'll give them what we have, you know, work another week on it, work another 2 weeks, and we'll give them what we have then.
Okay.
It just has to be manageable for staff, and we really try to do our best.
Great, okay, thank you.
Councilmember Duclos?
I think mine's a follow-up on Councilmember Maloney's. Do you get a lot of what people come in and ask for mounds of information, and your staff goes through it, and then they never come back and pick it up?
We've had a couple abandoned requests, but not to the huge magnitude. Sometimes, a lot of times, people get a speeding ticket, so they get this idea that they're gonna, you know, they're gonna check our speed cameras, and they want them, you know, when were they last calibrated, and all, you know, all this type of stuff that they want all these records for, and then maybe their court date passes and they don't pick it up. So that does happen. We did have the one big one that all cities got that said we want every city document, and then that one got pulled. So I think every city kind of collective sigh of relief on that one. But maybe, I'd say, less than 5% don't get picked up at some point. And we usually give them notification. You know, we give them until, you know, they're supposed to come pick it up. If it sits in a will call for too long, we will contact them by letter, by email, and say, you know, you have this records request waiting on you. If they're really big requests, sometimes we'll get a deposit down if it is copying records. A lot of departments done that before. If they're actually pulling 20 boxes, you know, we'll copy the first box and say, you know, you need to put a 10% deposit down, which is allowed. You know, once you pay that $20 or something, then we'll start working on the rest of it. So
Thank you.
there are avenues that we can take, but
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, council, any other questions? Deputy Mayor Burbridge.
Thank you, and thank you, Stephanie. I just want to say how much I appreciate the effort that you make and the good job that you do in helping to make everything work smoothly.
thank you.
So, and great presentation.
Thank you.
Councilmember Moore.
Stephanie, I'd like to say congratulations. You have lasted this long.
I was gonna say, you
and
guys
your
don't have to
presentation.
any questions.
So thank you. Thank you for all that you do again, and I appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
Council, any other? Great job, Stephanie.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Mayor's office, Brian Wilson, Chief of Staff.
So good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. It's my pleasure to present the mayor's budget tonight. I want to make reference to the fact that this is our org chart, and it is a broad view of the mayor's office in terms of different departments that are technically in the mayor's office. But in addition, the PAC and the planning efforts are also currently in the mayor's office, but aren't necessarily reflected in our org chart here. But as we're going through the startup process, we do have positions within the PAC that are identified. You've had presentations tonight from several departments that are within the mayor's office, and you will have others in the coming days. But I want to reiterate that the staff that we have is phenomenal. They do a phenomenal job. They work hard. They're dedicated. And I am familiar with, you know, different departments in different cities, both in our Puget Sound area, but also, you know, throughout the state. And, you know, we have the best of the best people. And as we move forward, it's going to be critical for us, because as lean as we operate as a city, that it's going to be important for us to retain and keep those employees that do such a phenomenal job for us. And you've had some examples of those tonight, and you'll certainly see from our directors that you always see before you, indicative of that great performance as well. So in terms of the mayor's office, you have the municipal court and the council that are separate, but are part of our org chart here. And we have economic development, emergency management, which is addressed by Ray Gross, Jean Stanley with human resources, Stephanie Courtney as the city clerk, and our IT manager, Thomas Fitchner. We have, in addition, our public and government affairs, which is Steve McNay. We have the executive assistant to the mayor, which is Kathy Arndt. And we have Jerry Lynn Clark, who is with council and has a percentage of her time with council and in other roles within community development. We also have an administrative assistant position that I'll talk about here as we go forward. Jerry Lynn does a phenomenal job. Kathy Arndt does a great job as well for us too. A couple of the highlights for the 2015-16 budget. Many of these initiatives you're familiar with and have seen before. The PAC groundbreaking in July 2014, the opening of Town Square Park in July of 2014, the success of the council and the mayor to keep public health open for our city in 15 and 16 with maternity and nutrition services, and service to 13,700 low-income women and children within Federal Way. We've increased our accessibility to city government through neighborhood connection meetings. We've had over 500 attendees over the last 2 years. The city newsletter publications have reached over 34,000 residents, and really an enhancement to Channel 22 regarding New Day Federal Way, public meetings and events, and the opportunity for citizens to be able to access that information. Mayor Farrell was selected as the board chair for the Valley Communications Board, Administrative Board, which is really an important position for our city and for the South County region. There's been improvements to marketing and operations of the facility. The Mayor's Day of Concern for the Hungry, we collected over 1,400 pounds of food for the multi-service center. Facilitated efforts with the opening of the day center, which is again planned for this fall. And there's been a tremendous amount of work over the last 12 to 18 months to get to a point where it's almost a reality. And we have great partners in the community and with Catholic Community Services and our faith-based community to bring that to fruition. The University Initiative, was initiated by the mayor and council. The needs assessment has been completed, and we're working on the rollout plan for that, which will be occur later this fall and certainly into 17 and 18. We initiated the Violence Prevention Coalition Steering Committee. They've been meeting regularly and anticipate that they will make a recommendation for an extension to continue their work. They are making progress. Jerry Lynn has been the assistant to that group and has been invaluable in terms of guiding them with public records and issues pertaining to the operation of that committee. Our goals for 17 and 18 for the mayor's office, one is to manage city resources in a responsible and responsive manner, enhance the customer service culture and can-do attitude that we have within this community and what we're recognized for. We implement mayor and council policy direction efficiently and effectively, facilitate council decision-making and policy development, by providing unbiased, thorough, and professional analysis, and that's not only, in the mayor's office, but throughout city staff, to provide that service. As Tim reported, implementation of city's economic development issues, and as also been mentioned, the reinstatement of the Federal Way rebranding initiative. It's important for us to finish and facilitate the opening, or finish construction and facilitate the opening of the PAC that's planned for the summer of 17. And as the reporting has taken place, we're on time, on budget, and we're excited for that moving forward. We will continue the efforts to obtain new market tax credit financing in order to reduce our debt financing. We are on page. The federal government has announced that they will double the amount of new market tax credit funding that will be available in the coming years. It's the first time that they've done it in many years, go from $3.5 billion to $7 billion. We have good relationships with community development entities about our project and the opportunities that prevent it. So we are very much active in trying to bring in those funds to our community. We will facilitate the University Initiative efforts in 17 and 18. We will support a SeaTac Airpoint North Steering Committee that has not been implemented yet, but that will be something that will happen in the coming weeks, months, as soon as we can get our time to get this going. We will manage and facilitate to address the development and adaptive reuse of the former Weyerhaeuser campus with IRG. That certainly has been a time issue for us and a priority over the last couple weeks to address the future of that important property. We need to re-examine city revenue and expenses options to ensure that we can be sustainable moving forward. A day's budget presentation highlights the challenges that we have moving forward. While we have a balanced budget submitted with the revenues that are here, we have challenges moving forward in terms of sustaining our operations and maintaining the quality that you as council and our community has come to expect. We need to coordinate planning efforts with Sound Transit to bring light rail and enhance bus service to Federal Way. If that happens, if by chance the vote takes place in November, that will be a significant turning point for our community in terms of the resources that will come, not only in terms of growth and development within Federal Way, but also the demand for quality people and employees to facilitate that effort on the part of Sound Transit and all the different things that can happen and change with that major investment in the community. We will lead and coordinate the city's role in local, regional, and federal issues as they come about. We'll lead and coordinate proactive and effective communications with citizens, news media, and employees, and ongoing communication about the city's vision, mission, and goals in the day-to-day operations and how we maintain good relationships with our community. A little bit about the total staffing. This is reflected in your budget. It starts on page C1. But just looking at the mayor's office, you can see 2014, 15, and 16, the actual numbers of employees. And then in 17, there's an increase to 27.34. This increase is attributed to planning efforts for 7 FTEs, and that'd be a total of 7 for the Performing Arts and Events Center in 17 and 18. So that's where the increase in numbers are showing. I want to talk a little bit about the council executive assistant and the human resources coordinator. You know, one of the highlights is we've made some changes, you know, from the 2 small offices, and we reorganized the council offices. And with that, you know, we've had both areas where there's a need to have a presence, you know, in both areas, both in the mayor's office and the council. And we are committed, and it is a priority for us to have the executive assistant to council, Jerry Land, located in the council offices. And I greatly appreciate your support as we've gone through some transition here in the last year, but that is a priority for us. We have a selection process that's in place for an administrative assistant position to be placed in the mayor's office. And our goal with that is to have approximately 60% of that person's time be dedicated to assisting Tim Johnson with economic development related issues. We've got to get the support to help him and others in that effort. And then, in addition, have that coverage in the mayor's office that enables that we don't have to draw from Jerry Lynn from where she is in the council's office. As a highlight, 60% of Jerry Lynn's time is estimated to be for the community services housing assistant in her job, and she does have public contact with that and does a tremendous job. And then 40% is the executive assistant to council. So, but I just want to reiterate from us in the mayor's office, this is a priority to have her located within the council offices. Just in terms of our budget and just numbers, and this is reflected in a day's summary pages, but we've had some increases, and most of that is attributed to the FTEs in the PAC. I would anticipate that the PAC will be its own department in the coming budget. It will not be incorporated into the mayor's office, but until we get started, we've kept it in the mayor's office. We have increases in benefits, and that number, 243,000 approximately, reflects the increases in new positions, health insurance premiums, and adjustments to benefit calculations. And then we've had some changes just between 16 and then looking at 17 and 18, and those are reflected in the next paragraph about we've had some increases, we've had some declines, and it balances out to approximately $150,000 in reduction from prior year. We've had a decrease of approximately $89,000 in intergovernmental services, and this is primarily not being in an election year, over 16 versus 17, and there's a reduction of about $89,000. And then we've had a decrease of approximately $790,000 due to one-time IT equipment purchases. And Director Fitchner will be here at a future budget session, and we'll talk about the IT budget, which is technically within the mayor's office as well. So as just a summary of the budgeted amounts in the mayor's office, you can see 14 and 15 was approximately 4.4 million. We're expecting about 6.1 million for 2016, and in projecting for 17 and 18, 5.757 and 5.798 and 18. So it certainly answered my question,
Councilmember Maloney, then Councilmember Duclos.
Thank you. I have several questions, but thank you for your presentation, Brian. I appreciate it. So just starting on that last page where we're projecting 2016 budget of 6.1, and so we don't know where it's going to end up. Is that why it's projected?
Well, some of the prior slides talk about some of those increases and decreases, and so that attributes for the difference.
Okay, yeah, I actually have some questions on those, so I'll get back to that in a second. So that's why it potentially will go down in 17 then?
That's correct.
Okay.
We had some major, like, for example, we had signed the invoices today for the new phone system for the city, which was in excess of $300,000. So we won't have these large.
Okay, yeah, I saw that in the review, so that
and the
explains
Amanda
that.
System just came online this weekend
Okay.
through our IT department as well.
Okay, great. Here you have, this is on under highlights and changes. Decrease in services and charges of $150,000 due to reduction of $100,000 in 2017 for branding initiative. Can you explain that?
Yes, the council authorized $100,000 in 2016. I believe it was 16 or 15. 16. It was in the 15-16 budget.
Right.
That money is still there. It was taken out of strategic reserves. So as we're looking at 17 and 18, we expect to spend that $100,000 in 2016. So there isn't additional money budgeted in 17 and 18. But that remaining funds that are available for the branding are still available to us in 16.
Okay, and we expect to spend them in 16. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay, thank you. And then, let's see. So in terms of the PAC, we have been through this before in another meeting where we discussed the new markets tax credits being having a requirement that it be run by a nonprofit. And we discussed that this would be different if the city were to actually run it. I actually went back after that meeting and looked at the Blue Ribbon Panel report, and I cannot remember her name, nor could I really ever pronounce it, but the person who from, I believe she was from Linwood, but I'm not sure, who did the pro forma, she stated in there that that she was doing the pro forma based on the assumption that that the PAC would be run by a nonprofit. And I think it's on page 32 or something like that. It's been several months since I've looked at it. But so this is fundamentally different than that. And it's really, the impact, I think, for the city could be very different. And I really want to take a look at whether the city really should be running it, regardless of new markets tax credits. And I think I said at that meeting when we discussed it that one of the key reasons I voted for it when I did was because we would be having distance from it at some point. So that's just a big concern of mine that I would like to address and talk to council about. And I mean, we did vote on it specifically being run that way, so it's something we need to talk about.
So if I could comment on that a little bit. First, you know, the discussions that came out of the Blue Ribbon Panel, certainly there was discussion preliminary about the idea, and even Patrick Doherty came forward and talked about new market tax credits and the fact that if the city were to be successful in receiving those, that there would have to be some structure, nonprofit,
A Qualic B.
or a nonprofit structure that would need to be implemented for us to take that, to be able to receive those funds. That is consistent with what was said with the Blue Ribbon Panel. That has not changed. We have consistent, in fact, we have probably done just a tremendous amount of work, additional work since that time to fully understand what's necessary to structure ourselves to be able to obtain those funds. And we have some of the best legal teams and legal resources available to us to structure ourselves in the event that we are successful in receiving new market tax credits. This has always been contemplated as a city facility, you know, run by the city. That hasn't changed, but how we structure ourselves to be able to retain those funds is where the nonprofit was contemplated. Qualic B.
I'll just say that my recollection of those meetings, and there were many of them, is that the nonprofit would be having the staffing, and so maybe I'm not remembering it correctly, but that is my recollection of it, and that's the point I'm making, is that it concerns me that the staffing numbers here are going to be ongoing for the city, and anyway. I would like to, I'd like the opportunity to review that before any decisions are made. So there's that. And then the last question I have is in regard to the 2017-2018 goals and objectives. And it says facilitate the university initiative efforts. So we have the needs assessment right now. We are rolling that out this year, right? Is that correct? Okay, good, because I will tell you that both of the universities that we have had significant discussions with, I've had opportunity to talk with them at events that I'm at and functions and meetings I'm at, and they're looking forward to talking to us. So we should do it as soon as possible.
Agreed,
yes.
agreed.
Okay.
We're actually working on that plan right now.
Great, thank you.
And And it's pretty exciting. I've had conversations with them as well, and so more to follow.
Great, thank you.
And thank you for all your work on that initiative and by the input of all the council. Thank you very much. All right, Brian? I'm sorry, are there any other questions by council? Councilmember Moore, then Deputy Mayor Burbidge.
Yes, Brian, the enhance the customer service culture and can-do attitude of city government. I'm interested in finding out what that means, and while you're answering that, I also have another question to follow up with that. Thank you.
Well, I think that's one thing that it's a privilege to be an employee of the City of Federal Way. This culture, since the city was incorporated in 1990, the police department was formed in 1996, the change in form of government. I've been an employee for the City of Federal Way for 20 years. One of the things that I love about this city is we are a can-do, get things done, organization with really high-quality, dedicated people. And that culture is very important to who we are. It's present in the police department, it's present within the city. And so there's always opportunities to enhance how we provide service and being responsive to citizens. And I think it's worthy of speaking to that issue, having that as part of our goals, and restating that to say we're always looking for ways to improve, but that is something that's very important to how we function and how we provide service.
And my follow-up is along that same thought of, in terms of questions, and that's, I just lost it. Lead and coordinate proactive and effective communication with citizens, the news media, and employees. I think there have been many moments where I've sat up here and thought to myself, well, geez, we could have done a better job communicating with citizens and getting the word out. We've talked about new technologies. There's a lot that we can do in that. And has there been any specific ideas that have come out of that are actionary that we plan to move forward on that?
I think that's an ongoing, with some of the efforts that have taken place with communications, the neighborhood connection meetings, the use of Channel 22, how we send emails out. We've had several, major issues with the community. For example, with, I can recall the center stage negotiations, and we had over 700 people who responded, and we responded to every one of those citizens. We're doing the same thing as we address the citizen concerns around North Lake and with the changes with IRG, with council. I think there's been times where there's nothing worse for us as a staff to have council that's surprised, that they didn't know something, they didn't, something came up. So we're really trying to figure out the systems and to enhance those to make sure that we keep information out, improve and enhance upon the information that we exchange. And so that reflects that goal to continue to improve and enhance in that regard.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Burbidge, then Councilmember Honda.
Thank you. I just would like to say briefly, Brian, thank you very much for your presentation and your good work. And your mention of and interchange here about the goals of the city and always having a very strong culture in our city among the staff. It's always been I'm in my 19th year with the city, and no city is perfect, but when I look at the history of our city and our operation, and I look at the revenue that we've had available, we continue, even with our updated graph, there are still 75% of the cities in King County which have a higher revenue per person than the city of Federal Way has. And some of the cities have twice the revenue and more than Federal Way has. And we do not function that way, and we do not appear that way. The way we appear is at a much higher level, and the way we function is at a much higher level. And I'm very appreciative.
Thank you. All right. Councilmember Honda, and then Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you. At what point does the PAC become its own department? Is that when it opens, or and will those people that are staffed at that in the PAC? Will they have offices in the PAC and not here?
I haven't had a specific date or discussion with Ade or with Teresa, our director, about when that will actually happen, but I think that's our belief that it will be a separate department in and of itself, not included within the mayor's office. I think it's important to account for the revenues and expenditures within the PAC operations, separately, and how that gets done. We haven't finalized that of how that will work. We will have staff that'll operate out of the PAC. The director and her staff will be based at the PAC facility.
So it says that the 6 will be full-time employees. We don't know how busy the PAC's going to be when it opens. It could be super busy, or it might not be. Do we know that we need 6 full-time employees? Does that count the director and on down to the cleaning people that we would have?
The director would be 7, so the director and 6 staff currently. And there's also a contingent of part-time staff that would be, hired on an as-needed basis, depending on the work. But one of the things that we're successful in doing is hiring a very experienced performance, director for this facility. And we are approaching this in a lean and efficient and operation manner, and it's incredibly important for us to be successful in the opening and the sustainability of the operations. So much of the discussion about the staffing level and how and the types of employees that will be is really within the expertise and the purview of our director, who we hired for her expertise in that area. It'll be a constant review of, the operations and the revenue and expenditures, and as we would do with any of our city departments. So that's our plan for operations in 17 and 18.
I would note that we actually are getting a presentation next Tuesday, October 4th, from Teresa Yvonne on the Performing Arts and Event Center, and we'll have a chance to get into a lot of these details.
Good, I'm looking forward to that. I don't know what the presentation will be, but I'm interested in how the catering or the kitchen will be run, and if that will be included in these employees that we're hiring, or if it's with the Muckleshoot Indians, they won't be our employees, or so I have so many questions about the PAC that I have not had answered, and we're opening soon, and I really feel like I need to catch up and find out really what's going on, because as a council member, I don't feel like I know really what's going on with the staffing, the money part of it, and how we're going to fulfill those demands.
So we'll be happy to meet with you to talk about those issues. And I'll be honest, there's some things that we do not have the answers to today. We will have those answers, in the coming months as we get closer to, the opening and the operation of the PAC. But certainly be willing or happy to meet with you and any council members to talk about where we are and where we think we're going to be by the time that it opens in the summer of next year.
Last week I had asked, I've been asking for how much it would cost for groups to rent the PAC. I've been asking for quite a while. Last week I found out that those numbers are in, and I was pretty much told I need to wait till next week to get the information, but I just don't want to be surprised. I want to be kept abreast of what's going on. It's a big, big project for the city, and it's a turning point for the city. It's going to add a lot of expense to the city, and it needs to bring in the income to pay for those expenses.
I will say that there was only a portion of the fees that have been discussed, and those were with some of our community groups. And there's been some discussion, as there should be, with those groups about what it will be to rent the facility and operating in the facility. But the final numbers have not been finalized yet. And that's something that Director Yvonne, as soon as she's able to put that out, in total, it will be in front of council to showcase what that business plan is for us for the opening.
And that's part of this budget, in my opinion, that I can't decide on this budget unless I know those numbers and what's going on with the PAC. I would hope that we would have that before we're voting on the budget. Thank you.
Teresa, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes,
Or
As-
Dan?
even though the park is part of the mayor's office budget, but it is also separately identified in the budget book before you. It is on D14, where we show the expected revenue and some of the support. Also, when we bring to the council the revenue schedule, as the chief of staff mentioned, that will also be part of what we'll be presenting to you, the fee in terms of renting the facility, either the hall or the rooms or whatever. All of those will be part of what we'll bring before the council. And in preparation for the presentation on Performing Arts Center, I think if you look at the budget for just the Performing Arts Center, you'll be able to see some of the details in terms of the dollar amount, the revenue source, and where they're coming from.
And just taking a look at, actually, hold on. There it is. So on D14, for those folks that have access to the budget, it has all kinds of information in regard to total expenditures, revenue projections, salaries and wages, benefits, supplies, services, and charges. So,
And Mayor, could I make a comment as well too, that, with the Blue Ribbon panel, even coming out of the recommendation, there was a 5-year plan that was identified in terms of revenue and expenditures. And one of the first things when Director Yvonne was hired was to assess that. And we actually had outside consultants assessing it as well. So that has been an ongoing and an iterative process to fine-tune what that 5-year plan will look like. And our budget recommendations will reflect what our estimates are moving forward.
all right, Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you. So that topic aside, I actually just wanted to thank you, Brian, and the mayor's office for the effort for additional communication to council. I know that, we had conversations about that recently, and that you immediately started providing more information, more communication on certain items, and it's much appreciated, so thank you.
All right, council, any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Brian. All right. So that concludes the department presentations. We have a section on here for citizen comment, but I would note that the hearing has been going on for just a few minutes shy of 3 hours. So we have no members of the public that remain. For those folks that are viewing at home, just want to let you know. So there is no citizen comment. And as a result, at this time, we are adjourned.